The year is 1860. The United States, a young nation built on ideals of liberty and unity, finds itself teetering on the brink of a devastating internal conflict. At the heart of this impending crisis lies a deep-seated division between the North and the South, a chasm carved by contrasting economic realities, social structures, and moral convictions. The North, with its bustling cities and burgeoning industries, thrives on a system of free labor. Factories churn out goods, railroads connect distant markets, and immigrants flock to its shores in search of opportunity. In contrast, the South clings to an agrarian way of life, its economy dominated by vast cotton plantations dependent on the labor of enslaved Africans. These fundamental differences in labor systems fuel not only economic disparities, but also vastly different social and political ideologies. The South views slavery as an integral part of its way of life, arguing for states' rights to maintain the institution. Abolitionist sentiment gains momentum in the North, challenging the morality of slavery and demanding its abolition. Moral outrage mixes with economic concerns, as Northerners increasingly view slavery as a threat to free labor and national unity. As the nation expands westward, the question of slavery in new territories becomes a flashpoint. Each side, deeply entrenched in its own beliefs and interests, views the expansion of slavery as an existential threat, further pushing the nation toward the precipice of disunion. Recognizing the growing rift, political leaders attempt to quell the storm with a series of compromises, desperately seeking to reconcile the irreconcilable. The Missouri Compromise of 1820, the Compromise Tariff of 1833, and the Compromise of 1850 are all attempts to maintain a fragile peace, each one a temporary bandage on a festering wound. These compromises, however, only serve to postpone the inevitable. They expose the widening gap between the North and the South, highlighting the fundamental differences that separate them. Each compromise further entrenches both sides in their positions, deepening the divide and fueling mistrust. The Fugitive Slave Act, a key provision of the Compromise of 1850, proves to be particularly divisive. It mandates that runaway slaves be returned to their owners, even in free states, sparking outrage in the North and galvanizing the abolitionist movement. The Underground Railroad, a network of safe houses and secret routes, gains momentum as ordinary citizens risk their own freedom to help enslaved people escape to the North. As tensions escalate, violence erupts on the Kansas frontier, a grim foreshadowing of the bloodshed to come. The nation watches in horror as bleeding Kansas becomes a battleground for the future of slavery, a stark reminder of the failure of compromise and the growing potential for national disintegration. The year 1860 marks a pivotal turning point in American history. The election of Abraham Lincoln, a Republican opposed to the expansion of slavery, sends shockwaves through the South. Lincoln's victory, achieved without carrying a single Southern state, is seen as a clear sign that the South has lost its political voice in the Union. Southern states view Lincoln's election as an existential threat to their way of life, their economy, and their very identity. The fiery rhetoric of secession, once a fringe movement, gains traction, fueled by fear, anger, and a deep sense of betrayal. The idea of a separate Southern nation, where slavery is protected and their way of life preserved, takes root in the hearts and minds of many Southerners. In the wake of Lincoln's victory, the once unthinkable becomes a terrifying reality: secession. South Carolina, followed by Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas, declare their secession from the Union, forming the Confederate States of America. The nation watches in disbelief as the experiment in democracy, so carefully crafted by the Founding Fathers, begins to unravel. The stage is set for a confrontation that will test the very fabric of the nation, a conflict that will determine the fate of the Union and the future of freedom itself. The die is cast, and the nation braces for the storm. With the election of Abraham Lincoln as President of the United States in 1860, the delicate balance of power between the North and South finally shattered. Deeply apprehensive of Lincoln's stance against the expansion of slavery, Southern states viewed his victory as a direct threat to their way of life. South Carolina, long a hotbed of secessionist sentiment, took the lead, seceding from the Union in December 1860. This decisive act sent shockwaves throughout the nation and emboldened other Southern states to follow suit. By February 1861, 6 more states, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas, had seceded, forming the Confederate States of America. Jefferson Davis, a former U.S. Senator from Mississippi, was elected as the Confederacy's first president. The Confederate Constitution, while mirroring the U.S. Constitution in many ways, explicitly protected the institution of slavery and emphasized states' rights. The secession of the Southern states was a culmination of decades of escalating tensions over slavery. It represented a fundamental rejection of the principles of unity and compromise upon which the United States had been founded. With the nation now divided, the specter of war loomed large, threatening to tear apart the very fabric of American society.